Eros and Thelema, a comprehensive analysis of sex magic from ancient precursors to modern praxis. Section 1. Introduction. The alchemical marriage of Eros and will. Defining sex magic beyond manifestation to spiritual transformation. Sex magic, in its most fundamental definition, is any form of sexual activity employed in the pursuit of magical, ritualistic, or spiritual objectives. 1. It is a practice predicated on the concept that sexual energy constitutes a uniquely potent and primal force, one that can be consciously harnessed, directed, and utilized to effect change in conformity with will. 1. This willed intention is the critical element that differentiates a sex magic operation from a purely hedonic or procreative sexual act. The core premise, shared across its various schools of thought, is that the energy generated during sexual arousal and climax is the very essence of creation itself, a force capable of transcending the boundaries of ordinary reality. A crucial distinction exists between the contemporary, popularized understanding of sex magic and its more profound esoteric functions. In modern, mainstream discourse, the practice is often presented as a specialized form of manifestation, a technique for achieving material or personal goals, such as a job promotion, financial gain, or attracting a new partner. 2. This perspective, heavily influenced by New Age philosophies and the law of attraction, frames sex magic as a transactional tool for improving one's circumstances within the existing world. However, its historical and initiatory context reveals a far more ambitious purpose. Within the esoteric traditions that codified the practice, sex magic serves as a powerful method for spiritual attainment, a path to achieving direct knowledge of the divine, gnosis, and a means of accomplishing the great work of self-realization. It is a technology not merely for altering one's life, but for altering one's consciousness and, ultimately, one's being. This divergence in purpose highlights a significant secularization of what was originally conceived as a sacrament. The language of the practice's architects is theological and metaphysical. Pascal Beverly Randolph described the moment of orgasm as an instant when the soul suddenly opens to the divine realm and the breath of God is infused. One Aleister Crowley framed the sexual act as a sacrament of will, a holy rite central to his religion of Thelema. 1. In contrast, contemporary popular sources often employ the language of consumerist desire. Bring things into your life. A job promotion. Abundant AF. 3. This shift from transcendence to transaction reflects a broader trend in which complex esoteric systems, once transmitted through the graded and demanding structure of initiatory orders, are simplified and repackaged for a mass audience. To become palatable, the challenging philosophical underpinnings are often replaced with a universally applicable model of ask, believe, receive. 6. This creates a fundamental disconnect between the public perception of sex magic as a hot and sweaty manifestation practice and the rigorous, psychologically demanding, and philosophically radical systems from which it emerged. The central premise: sexual energy as the primal creative force. At the heart of all sex magic theory lies the axiom that sexual energy and creative energy are one and the same. 2. The sexual act is viewed as a microcosm of the universal act of creation. It is the engine of biology, the force that brings forth new life. The sex magician posits that this creative impulse is not limited to the material plane. With sufficient will and focus, the raw energy of the sex center can be transformed into golden manifestation, birthing not only physical children, but also desired outcomes, new states of consciousness, or even non-corporeal entities, known as magical children. This energy is considered a neutral force, a superpower, that can be directed toward any conceivable end. 5. Its applications are vast, ranging from the mundane goals of worldly success and physical healing to the ultimate spiritual objective of enlightenment, or the attainment of godhood. The orgasm in this paradigm is transformed from a fleeting biological spasm into a moment of immense magical potential. It is a kickstarter for spells, a point of total bliss and total focus, where the boundaries of the ego momentarily dissolve, allowing the magician's intention to be projected into the cosmos with maximum force. This act of vibrational seeding is believed to implant the desire into the fertile womb of the matrix, where it can gestate and manifest in the physical world, 2. Overview of key lineages and philosophical divergences. The codification of sex magic in the Western world is primarily the work of a few key figures and the secret societies they influenced. Pascal Beverly Randolph laid the groundwork in the mid-19th century, establishing the orgasm as a magical gateway and creating a highly structured system for its use. His teachings were seminal, directly influencing the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor and forming the core secret of the Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO. One Aleister Crowley, who would later lead the OTO, radically expanded and revolutionized the practice, integrating it into his philosophical system of Thelema 10. He rejected Randolph's moralistic framework and embraced all forms of sexual expression as sacramental acts, developing a complex curriculum of autosexual, heterosexual, and homosexual techniques within the OTO's degree structure. From these foundational systems, several philosophical divergences have emerged. A primary schism exists between the left-hand path and the right-hand path. The left-hand path, exemplified by Randolph and Crowley, utilizes the explosive force of the orgasm to project the will. The right-hand path, drawing from Eastern traditions like Taoism, and codified by figures such as Samael Aun Weor, views orgasmic release as a depletion of vital energy and instead focuses on the retention and transmutation of sexual force, raising it internally for spiritual development. 1. In the late 20th century, the rise of chaos magic introduced another paradigm, deconstructing the practice into a purely pragmatic technology, stripping it of its theological and symbolic baggage, and reducing the orgasm to a functional tool for achieving a state of gnosis, necessary to bypass the conscious mind. 12. This report will trace these lineages, analyze their core tenets, and explore the philosophical and practical implications of their divergent approaches. Section 2. Historical precursors and esoteric lineages. Modern Western sex magic is not an unbroken tradition passed down from antiquity. It is, rather, a syncretic reconstruction, a modern esoteric system forged in the 19th and 20th centuries by occultists who acted as philosophical bricoleurs. These figures selectively borrowed, reinterpreted, and often misunderstood concepts, symbols, and terminology from a wide array of disparate historical sources, including Taoism, Gnosticism, alchemy, and Tantra, to construct and legitimize a new and distinctly Western praxis. 14. The connection to these ancient traditions is therefore one of influence and appropriation, not of direct lineage. Understanding these precursors is essential to deconstructing the mythology surrounding sex magic and appreciating it as a product of modern esoteric creativity, one that weaves together historical threads into a new tapestry serving its own unique philosophical aims. Ancient roots, ritual sexuality in Taoism and ancient Egypt. The association of sexuality with the divine is a recurring theme in human history. In ancient Egypt, c. 4th millennium BCE, sex was not shrouded in shame, but was viewed as an integral spiritual act connected to the core religious tenets of death, transformation, and rebirth. This is evidenced by sexually explicit rituals such as the Festival of Drunkenness, a massive orgy held to honor the goddess Sekhmet, and the use of amulets depicting deities of fertility and sexual pleasure, such as Bes and Tamalet, which were considered living spells of virility and protection. A more direct philosophical precursor can be found in Taoism, c. 206 BCE. Taoist sexual practices, known as Heqi or joining energy, were explicitly designed to balance the cosmic forces of yin and yang and to cultivate life force energy, or qi. 9. Central to these practices was the technique of Huanjing Bunao, which translates to returning the essence to replenish the brain. This involved men engaging in prolonged sexual activity while avoiding ejaculation, based on the belief that retaining semen would cause the vital qi to flow back up the spine and into the brain, promoting health, longevity, and spiritual vitality. 9. This ancient Taoist concept of conserving and transmuting sexual energy is a foundational principle that resurfaces thousands of years later in the right-hand path, schools of Western sex magic. The Gnostic undercurrent. Sexual symbolism and the quest for gnosis. The association between Gnosticism and sex magic is a modern phenomenon, largely a result of 19th and 20th century esoteric revival movements seeking a heretical lineage. 15. While ancient Gnostic texts are replete with sexual symbolism, including celestial marriages, divine syzygies, paired emanations, and the myth of Sophia, there is little historical evidence to suggest that they engaged in actual sexual rituals. The lurid accounts of such practices come almost exclusively from the polemical writings of their Orthodox Christian opponents, the heresiologists. 15. Some sects, like the Barbello Gnostics, were accused of practicing a form of redemption by sin, a concept that resonates with the transgressive ethos of later left-hand path traditions, but this remains largely in the realm of accusation rather than documented practice. 16. The true influence of Gnosticism on modern sex magic is philosophical, not practical. It lies in the shared emphasis on gnosis, direct, personal experiential knowledge of the divine, as opposed to blind faith, pistis. Modern occult organizations, most notably the Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO, adopted the Gnostic label and incorporated rituals like the Gnostic Mass to align themselves with this tradition of esoteric knowledge and spiritual rebellion against orthodoxy. 15. Gnosticism provided a historical precedent for a spiritual path centered on secret knowledge and individual illumination, a framework into which the supreme secret of sex magic could be placed, the great work in miniature. Alchemical conjunctio and the union of opposites. The contribution of Western alchemy to sex magic is almost entirely symbolic and allegorical, yet profoundly influential. Alchemical treatises are rich with erotic and gendered imagery, centered on the concept of the conjunctio, the sacred or chemical wedding of the archetypal opposites: the king, Sol, the sun, the masculine, and the queen, Luna, the moon, the feminine. 18. This union, frequently depicted as a literal sexual act in a flask or bath, symbolized the merging of contrary principles: hot and cold, fire and water, spirit and matter, conscious and unconscious, to produce a perfected, unified, and often androgynous third entity. The Philosopher's Stone, or the rebus. 19. The psychoanalyst Carl Jung famously interpreted this entire process as a powerful metaphor for individuation, the psychological journey of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche to achieve wholeness. 19. For the architects of modern sex magic, the alchemical conjunctio provided a ready-made, sophisticated symbolic language to describe the metaphysical process occurring during a sexual ritual. The physical union of two individuals, or the integration of masculine and feminine energies within a single practitioner, was seen as a reenactment of the great work, a magical operation designed to dissolve duality and create a new, transcendent reality. 21. This influence is explicit in the work of practitioners like Samael Aun-Weor, who directly labeled semen as the prima materia, or crude matter, of the great work, containing the alchemical principles of salt, sulfur, and mercury. 11. The Eastern influence, the Western interpretation and adaptation of Tantra. The relationship between Hindu and Buddhist Tantra and Western sex magic is perhaps the most significant and also the most fraught with misunderstanding. Western occultism clearly borrowed foundational concepts from its perception of Tantra, including the idea of sexual energy as a spiritual force, Kundalini, the system of energy centers, chakras, through which this force ascends, and the use of ritualized intercourse, Maithuna, as a spiritual practice. 1. However, a critical distinction must be made. In its traditional Eastern context, Tantra is a vast and complex spiritual system encompassing philosophy, meditation, yoga, and ritual, of which sexual practices are only one small, advanced, and highly restricted component. 22. These rites were reserved for initiated adepts and were aimed at transcending desire and achieving spiritual liberation through the union of the divine masculine, Shiva, and feminine, Shakti, principles. The Western adaptation, often termed Neo-Tantra, and the sex magic that grew alongside it represent a significant shift in focus. As scholar Georg Feuerstein and others have noted, where traditional Tantra ritualized sexuality as part of a larger theological system, the West has largely sexualized the ritual. 26. The emphasis in many Western practices is on using sex to achieve personal goals, enhancing pleasure, healing psychological and sexual blockages, fostering intimacy, or manifesting material desires. 26. While these practices can be profound in their own right, they are philosophically distinct from the intricate metaphysical framework of classical Tantra. The Western encounter with Tantra, particularly from the late 19th century onward, involved a process of selection, simplification, and recontextualization to fit Western esoteric and, later, therapeutic and commercial frameworks. Section 3. The Genesis of Modern Western Sex Magic. Pascal Beverly Randolph, the practical codification of sex magic as a distinct system in the Western esoteric tradition, can be traced directly to the work of one seminal figure, Pascal Beverly Randolph, 1825 to 1875. 1. An American spiritualist, occultist, and social reformer, Randolph synthesized his studies of Rosicrucianism, spiritualism, and his travels in the East into a unique and highly influential system. His work represents a crucial bridge between the repressive sexual mores of the Victorian era and the radical liberationist philosophies that would follow. He was the first to explicitly articulate a practical methodology for using the power of the orgasm as a magical engine. True sex power is God power. The system of the mysteries of Ulysses Randolph's central and most revolutionary doctrine was encapsulated in his declaration, true sex power is God power. 1. He posited that the moment of orgasm is the most intense, solemn, and spiritually powerful experience a human being can have. At this peak of physical and emotional intensity, he taught, the soul suddenly opens to the divine realm, and the breath of God is infused. 1. This single concept fundamentally recontextualized the sexual climax. It was no longer merely a biological function for procreation or a source of worldly pleasure or sin, but a sacramental gateway, a fleeting moment when the veil between the material and spiritual worlds becomes permeable. For Randolph, this orgasmic crisis was the key to all magical power, a moment when a properly formulated prayer or act of will could be projected directly into the divine realm to ensure its accomplishment. Fort, this elevation of the orgasm to a divine act, however, was immediately tempered by a rigid and moralistic framework that reflects the anxieties of the 19th century. Randolph's system was not a call for free love, a movement he viewed with considerable trepidation at 14. Instead, he sought to create a sanctified and controlled container for a force he recognized as both divine and potentially dangerous. His work embodies a profound tension. It radically sacralizes sexuality while simultaneously attempting to contain its power within a structure of moral purity and strict ritual protocol. He was not a libertine, but a pioneer attempting to reclaim a powerful aspect of human experience for spiritual purposes, albeit one still deeply influenced by the conventions of his time. This provides a vital baseline against which to measure the radical transgressions of his successor, Aleister Crowley. The formula of volition, ritual requirements, and the role of the superior woman. Randolph's method, which he termed the formula of volition, was highly prescriptive and demanded significant discipline from its practitioners. A successful operation was not a matter of spontaneous passion, but a carefully orchestrated ritual experiment. The key requirements, detailed in works like The Mysteries of Ulysses, included the ritual space and purity. The working was to take place in an upper room, and both participants were required to maintain absolute personal, mental, and moral cleanliness throughout the process. Duration and concentration. The operation was structured as a 49-day experiment. During this entire period, the practitioners were to continuously hold their desired outcome in mind, formulating the desire and maintaining focus. The nuptive prayer. The sexual act itself was the climax of the operation. During intercourse, which Randolph called the nuptive prayer, no words were to be spoken. Instead, both partners were to intensely visualize and will their shared goal. 1. The simultaneous climax. Randolph was adamant that the magical efficacy of the rite depended on both the man and woman achieving orgasm at the exact same moment. This double crisis was the precise instant when the magical prayer was fulfilled and the gate to the divine was opened. The superior woman. Central to the success of the entire operation was the participation of a specific type of female partner, whom Randolph referred to as the adjuvancy of a superior woman. 1. He laid out a stringent list of qualifications and disqualifications. She could not be a harlot or low woman, a virgin, under the age of 18, or another man's wife. Crucially, she must be a woman who hath known man, and who possessed intense mental, volitional, and affectionate energy, combined with perfect sexive and orgasmal ability. 1. This emphasis on the woman's volitional power and orgasmic capacity was revolutionary for its time, positioning her as an active and essential magical partner rather than a passive vessel. Randolph's enduring legacy, the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor and the OTO. Although Randolph's work was often obscure and met with controversy during his lifetime, its influence on the development of Western occultism was profound and lasting. After his death, his teachings on sex magic were disseminated through various secret societies in Europe and in America. 1. They formed a core part of the curriculum of the influential Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, HB of L. Most significantly, Randolph's system became the foundational secret of the Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO. The OTO's founder, Karl Kellner, claimed to have come into contact with Randolph's teachings, likely through his involvement with the HB of L, and incorporated them as the central mystery of the order's highest degrees. When Theodor Reuss later took leadership of the OTO, he explicitly stated in the order's journal, Oriflamme, that our order possesses the key which opens up all Masonic and Hermetic secrets, namely, the teaching of sexual magic. This key was, in essence, the system first articulated by Paschal Beverly Randolph. Through the OTO, Randolph's pioneering work would be preserved, transformed, and transmitted to the most influential occultist of the 20th century, Aleister Crowley. Section 4. Aleister Crowley and Thelema. The sacralization of the sexual act. If Paschal Beverly Randolph laid the foundation for modern sex magic, it was Aleister Crowley, 1875 to 1947, who built the towering and controversial edifice that defines the practice to this day. Crowley took Randolph's central idea, the magical potency of the orgasm, and stripped it of its Victorian moralism, radically expanding its scope and integrating it into a comprehensive spiritual and philosophical system known as Thelema. For Crowley, sex magic was not merely a technique for achieving specific goals. It was the supreme sacrament of his new religion, a practical expression of its central law, and a powerful weapon for spiritual revolution. Do what thou wilt. Thelema, true will, and the great work. Crowley's entire magical philosophy is predicated on the Book of the Law, Liber Vel Legis, a text he claimed was dictated to him in Cairo in 1904 by a praetor-human intelligence named Iwas 10. This book proclaimed the dawning of a new spiritual era, the Aeon of Horus, and articulated its fundamental principles. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and love is the law, love under will. 30. This famous dictum is not, as often misinterpreted, a license for simple hedonism or anarchy. Do what thou wilt is an injunction for each individual to discover and perform their true will, their unique, divine purpose or destiny in the cosmos. The lifelong pursuit of discovering and accomplishing this true will is known as the great work. 30. Within this thelemic framework, magic, spelled with a K, by Crowley to differentiate it from stage magic, is defined as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. 32. Sex magic, by harnessing the most powerful energy available to a human being, thus becomes one of the most potent tools for accomplishing the great work. 30. The sexual act as a sacrament. Crowley's rejection of sin and suppression. Crowley's philosophy represents a total inversion of the traditional Judeo-Christian view of sexuality. He identified the concept of sin, particularly sexual sin, and the resultant suppression of the libido as the primary source of psychological and spiritual disease. He argued that the shocking evils which we all deplore are principally due to the perversions produced by suppressions. The feeling that it's shameful and the sense of sin cause concealment, which creates distortion, neurosis, and ends in explosion. When place of suppression, the Book of the Law offers radical liberation. Each individual has an absolute right to satisfy his sexual instinct as is physiologically proper for him. 1. For Crowley, every sexual act, provided it is an expression of one's true will, is a holy and lawful sacrament. The sexual act is a sacrament of will. To profane it is the greatest offense. All true expression of it is lawful. All suppression or distortion of it is contrary to the law of liberty. 1. This philosophy provided a theological justification for the exploration of all forms of sexual expression as valid magical paths. Consequently, Crowley's system explicitly incorporates autosexual, masturbatory, heterosexual, and homosexual acts as distinct and legitimate magical techniques, each with its own unique properties and applications. This approach constitutes a form of theological rebellion. By sacralizing acts historically condemned as sinful, particularly masturbation, non-procreative intercourse, and homosexuality, Crowley sought to demolish the moral framework of the old Aeon of Osiris, the era of dying god religions like Christianity, and liberate the individual will. The use of sexual fluids, or elixirs, in rituals such as the creation of the cake of light, serves as a direct transgressive reinterpretation of the Christian Eucharist. 33. Instead of consuming bread and wine as symbols of a distant external savior, the thelemic magician consumes a substance charged with their own life force, their own sexual essence. This act is a powerful affirmation of the thelemic tenet, there is no God but man, placing the individual at the center of their own spiritual universe. 35. Analysis of key texts, symbolism and practice. Crowley wrote extensively on sex magic, though often in heavily veiled, symbolic language. Several of his libri, books central to understanding his teachings, Libereo, Sexual Magic. This short text outlines 3 methods of attainment using a willed series of structured around the Gnostic formula, Ideo. 1. This formula represents the cyclical process of life, Isis, birth, death, Apophis, destruction and rebirth, Osiris, resurrection, which serves as a model for all magical transformation, 36. The text's highly symbolic instructions, such as accumulating the dew from lotus flowers, a metaphor for sexual fluids, and anointing the wand, the phallus, point to a practice of charging the self with sexual essence to achieve enlightenment. 37. Liber agape vel si vel azoth. This is explicitly identified as containing the secret instructions of the ninth degree of the OTO. 1. Its subtitle, The Book of the Unveiling of the Sangral, wherein it is spoken of the wine of the Sabbath of the adepts, makes its subject clear. The Sangral, Holy Grail, is the sacred vessel, the yoni or cup, and the wine of the Sabbath is the elixir, the sexual fluids produced and consumed during the rite. 1. The text's central symbolic instruction, pour the sun into the moon, is a direct command for the male principle, sun, to impregnate the female vessel, moon, creating the magical elixir. 38. The Book of Lies, Liber 333. This highly cryptic work, composed of 93 short chapters corresponding to Kabbalistic numbers, was the catalyst for Crowley's leadership in the OTO. Theodore Royce, then head of the order, recognized that Crowley had, without being an initiate of the highest degrees, published the supreme secret of the OTO, in plainest language, in one of its chapters, 39. While the exact chapter is debated, scholarly consensus points to 2 primary candidates. Chapter 69, The Way to Succeed and the Way to Suck Eggs, is widely interpreted as a reference to mutual oral sex as a magical practice. Chapter 36, The Star Sapphire, presents a ritual that is also believed to contain the formula in symbolic form, 39. The book as a whole functions to shock the reader out of conventional modes of thought, with the secrets of sex magic being a key component of its hidden, transgressive wisdom. Section V, Thelemic Praxis, a compendium of Crowley's rituals, a least-to-release theoretical framework for sex magic, was accompanied by a specific, often demanding, ritual practices designed to produce altered states of consciousness and achieve magical results. These techniques range from complex group workings to the symbolic drama of the OTO's central public ceremony, erotocomatose lucidity, the sleep of Siloam, and divine communion. One of Crowley's most unique contributions to the technology of sex magic is the ritual of erotocomatose lucidity, also known as the sleep of Siloam. 33. This advanced practice is not aimed at manifestation in the conventional sense, but at achieving a specific and profound altered state of consciousness conducive to prophecy and direct communion with divine entities. 33. The ritual's methodology is rigorous and consists of 2 distinct phases. Phase 1, arousal and exhaustion. The central practitioner, termed the ritualist seer, remains entirely passive. They are attended by 1 or more aides whose sole function is to repeatedly bring the seer to the highest pitch of sexual arousal while simultaneously exhausting them physically. Any and all means of stimulation are considered valid, including physical touch, psychological suggestion, sex toys, and the use of entheogenic drugs such as hashish, 33. Critically, in Crowley's original formulation, the seer is forbidden from reaching orgasm. The goal is to induce a state of complete sexual exhaustion that causes the seer to drift into a deep sleep. 33. Religious scholar Hugh Urban notes that while aids of the opposite sex were common, Crowley considered the use of same-sex aids to be the highest stage of practice of this ritual. 33(2). The trance state. Once the seer is asleep or near sleep, the second phase begins. The aids carefully resume sexual stimulation, but only to the point where the seer is on the very brink of waking. At that moment, all stimulation ceases, and the seer is allowed to sink back toward sleep. This delicate process of alternately rousing and relaxing the seer is repeated indefinitely. The objective is to suspend the seer's consciousness in the liminal state between sleep and wakefulness, a trance or sleep of lucidity, in which their mind is open to receiving visions, prophecies, or direct communication from their god. 33. Crowley also described a vampiric variation of this rite. In this version, the aids use only their mouths to sexually exhaust the ritualist, with the explicit intent not of assisting the seer, but of draining their magical power and transferring it to themselves. 33. The Gnostic Mass. Libertätspflicht. Public ritual and thelemic Eucharist. While not a sex magic working in the same sense as a private ritual for a specific goal, the Gnostic Mass is the central public ceremony of the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica, EGC, the ecclesiastical arm of the OTO, and it is saturated with the symbolism of thelemic sex magic, Pont 30. The entire rite is a dramatic representation of the cosmic cycle of creation through the union of opposites. The priest, representing the active solar phallic principle, and the priestess, representing the receptive lunar teic principle, enact this union symbolically. The priestess sits naked upon the high altar, personifying the ultimate source of possibilities. 17. The climax of the Mass occurs when the priest, after declaring his unity with the priestess, plunges his lance into the cup she holds. A transparent allegory for sexual intercourse. 17. This act consecrates the Eucharist, which consists of a cake of light and a goblet of wine mixed with water, or, in some interpretations, the sexual elixirs themselves. The congregation then partakes of this Eucharist, symbolically internalizing the mystery of life created through the union of the divine masculine and feminine, the creation of the homunculus, and the concept of the magical child. A more esoteric and ambitious application of sex magic within Crowley's system is the creation of a magical child. This concept operates on multiple levels. On a practical, results-oriented level, the magical child is the manifested outcome of any sex magic operation. The child, born from the union of the magician's will and the creative energy of the sexual act. However, the concept also extends to the literal creation of a being. This can refer to the creation of a non-physical entity, a homunculus, which is an artificial spirit designed to serve the magician. More profoundly, it can refer to the use of sex magic to influence the incarnation of a specific, highly advanced soul into a physical body. Crowley's 1917 novel, Moonchild, is a fictionalized exploration of such an operation, depicting a magical war between a white lodge and a black lodge to control the impregnation of a specially prepared woman with an ethereal being. 7. This Moonchild is intended to be a messianic figure, a new leader for humanity. This idea had a powerful influence on Crowley's followers. The most famous attempt to put this theory into practice was the Babylon Working, a series of rituals performed in 1946 by the pioneering rocket scientist and Thelemite Jack Parsons, with the assistance of L. Ron Hubbard. Inspired directly by Moonchild, the goal of the Babylon Working was to use powerful sex magic rites to manifest an incarnation of Babylon, the supreme thelemic goddess in human form. This woman would then be impregnated by Parsons to give birth to a magical child, the Antichrist, who would usher in the full realization of the Aeon of Horus. Section 6. Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO, sex magic within an initiatory structure. The Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO, stands as the most prominent secret society to institutionalize sex magic as its central doctrine. The order's structure is based on a progressive series of initiations, or degrees, designed to guide the candidate through the profound mysteries of nature and self-discovery. 42. From its early days under Theodore Royce, the OTO's primary claim to authority rested on its possession of a single supreme secret. As Rios declared in 1912, our order possesses the key which opens up all Masonic and Hermetic secrets, namely, the teaching of sexual magic. 1. This teaching was presented as the ultimate hermeneutic, the interpretive lens through which all religious and esoteric symbolism could finally be understood, the degree system, a pathway to the supreme secret. The OTO's initiatory system is divided into a series of triads. While the lower degrees, in the Man of Earth triad, use allegory and symbol to instruct the candidate in the path of life, death, and rebirth, the higher degrees become progressively more explicit. 4. The rituals and teachings of the Bredigs through the 8 incarnates are specifically described as instructions to the initiate in the mastery of life, encompassing Hermetic philosophy, Kabbalah, magic, and yoga. The entire curriculum of these upper degrees is aimed at preparing the initiate for the revelation and application of one supreme secret. 44. This secret is the theory and practice of sex magic. This pedagogical structure establishes an epistemology of sex. It posits that sexuality is not merely one aspect of the occult, but the ultimate key to understanding all of it. By placing these teachings in the highest degrees, the OTO frames them as the culmination of all magical training, the final revelation that illuminates all previous veiled instruction. From the perspective of a Eigensides initiate, a Rosicrucian alchemical text is no longer just about spiritual purification. It is a coded manual for sex magic. A Masonic allegory is not just about moral philosophy. It is a symbolic representation of the sexual process. This interpretive framework, while not historically verifiable for all traditions, is central to the OTO's claim to preeminence among esoteric orders. The Hermit's Triad, in-depth analysis of the 8 degrees, Eingrees, and Individual degrees. The core practical teachings of sex magic are concentrated in the highest triad of the order, known as the Hermit Triad. It is here that the supreme secret is unveiled in its practical applications. When Aleister Crowley reformed the OTO around the law of Thelema, he systematized these degrees to teach distinct forms of sex magic, Pointneries, perfect pontiff of the Illuminati. The curriculum of the 8th degree is focused on autosexual or masturbatory magical techniques, which Crowley termed the lesser work of soul. 1. This degree instructs the initiate in the art of generating, conserving, and directing their own sexual energy without the need for a partner. It is a practice of self-reliance, teaching the magician to become a self-contained and self-sufficient magical engine. The governing body for members of this degree is the secret Areopagus of the Illuminati. 28 degrees, initiate of the sanctuary of the Gnosis. The 9th degree reveals the central formula of the order, the practice of heterosexual magical techniques, Point 1. This is the core of partnered sex magic within the OTO, involving the union of the male and female principles to create the elixir, or magical agent. The prime duty of members who have reached the Einsichtes is to study and to practice the theurgy and thaumaturgy of the degree, consisting of the supreme secret of the order, 28. This degree is considered the pinnacle of the order's practical magical system. Strix, initiate of the 11th degree. This degree, an addition by Crowley, stands outside the main progressive structure and is described as technical. 28. Its teachings concern the magical use of anal intercourse. 1. This formula is often interpreted within the order as being of a different alchemical nature than the Einsichtes working, capable of producing specific types of energy or achieving results not possible through the more conventional heterosexual formula. Its inclusion represents Crowley's commitment to exploring all avenues of sexual expression as potential sources of magical power. The following table provides a concise summary of the sex magic curriculum within the OTO's initiatory structure. Table 1, Sex Magic in the OTO initiatory structure. Degree title, Triad Focus of Practice, Associated Texts, Teachings, Theatry Perfect Pontiff of the Illuminati, Hermit Autosexual, Masturbatory, Magic, The Lesser Work of Soul, Self-Generation of Magical Energy, Initiate of the Sanctuary of the Gnosis, Hermit, Heterosexual Magic, The Supreme Secret of the Order, Creation of the Elixir through Partnered Union, Liber Agape vel Si vel Azoth, the Parizagri Initiate of the 11th degree, Hermit Magic of Anal Intercourse, a technical formula outside the main progression, often associated with homosexual operations or specific alchemical goals. The Paris working, the nature of the secret, unveiling the central formula of the order. The supreme secret of the OTO is not merely the act of having sex within a ritual context. It is the comprehensive understanding that sexual energy, and most specifically the physical secretions or elixirs generated during the sexual act, semen, vaginal fluids, and their mixture, are the tangible, physical vehicles of the magical life force. The secret is the knowledge of how to generate this force, how to consecrate the elixirs produced, and how to utilize them to cause change to occur in conformity with will. When Theodore Royce confronted Crowley about having published this secret in the Book of Lies, the revelation that flashed upon Crowley's vision was precisely this: that the sexual process, in all its variations, was the literal, physical basis for the symbolism of creation, death, and resurrection found in all major religious and initiatory systems. 39. The secret, therefore, is the key that unlocks this universal symbolism, revealing the alchemical wedding, the Eucharist, and the search for the Holy Grail as allegories for the practice of sex magic. The following table offers a comparative analysis of the foundational systems of sex magic, highlighting their core principles and divergent approaches to the central role of the orgasm. Table 2, Comparative Analysis of Foundational Sex Magic Systems. Theorist System Core Principle Role of Orgasm Key Rituals Practices. Stated Goal, Pascal B. Randolph. True sex power is God power. The orgasm is a gateway to the divine, essential for release. Must be simultaneous between partners to project the will, the 49-day formula of volition, with a superior woman, in a purified setting, worldly and spiritual gains, fulfillment of prayers. Aleister Crowley, Thelema. Love is the law, love under will. The sexual act is a sacrament of true will, essential for release, the peak moment of power for projecting will and achieving gnosis. Autosexual, 8 degrees. Heterosexual, Einskers homosexuals, generis workings, eroto-comatose lucidity, accomplishment of the great work, self-realization, spiritual liberation. Sexual energy is a sacred force to be conserved and transmuted, to be avoided. Orgasmic release is a depletion of spiritual energy, fornication. Coitus reservatus, sexual union without ejaculation, white, sexual magic. Transmutation of sexual energy to awaken kundalini and form solar bodies, spiritual purification. Section 7. Contemporary currents, from Neo-Tantra to chaos magic. In the latter half of the 20th century and into the 21st, the practice of sex magic has moved beyond the confines of secret societies, diversifying into two major, often overlapping streams. A popularized form aligned with New Age spirituality and the self-help movement, and a radically pragmatic, deconstructivist approach known as chaos magic, the popularization of practice, modern manifestation, and high vibrational states. The most visible form of sex magic today is a simplified, non-initiatory practice heavily influenced by the law of attraction and modern therapeutic concepts. 6. This approach strips away the complex theology of Thelema and the rigid protocols of Randolph, reframing the practice in the accessible language of energy work and personal empowerment. The central goal is manifestation, and the mechanism is the achievement of a high vibrational state. 3. This state can be generated not only through intense sexual arousal and pleasure, but also through elevated emotions such as love, gratitude, and peace. 3. The methodology is typically streamlined into a basic ritual formula that can be adapted for solo or partnered practice. Set intention. The practitioner clearly defines a desire, often writing it down as a present tense affirmation, e.g., I am healthy, wealthy, and thriving. Create sacred space. The environment is prepared to feel sensual and safe, often using candles, incense, music, and other aesthetic elements to engage the 5 senses and activate the primal body and mind. 1. Raise energy. The practitioner builds sexual energy through self-pleasure or partnered sex, often incorporating breathwork and visualization. Many modern systems adapt a simplified model of the chakra system, imagining the energy moving up from the root chakra to the crown. 3. Visualize and release. At the point of highest arousal or at the moment of orgasm, the practitioner intensely visualizes their desired outcome as if it has already been achieved. The orgasmic release is seen as the force that sends your vision into the universe to manifest. Close the ritual. The practice concludes with a period of stillness, gratitude, and grounding. Chaos magic, a deconstructivist and pragmatic approach emerging from the British counterculture of the 1970s, chaos magic represents a radical departure from all traditional forms of occultism. 46. It is not a system of beliefs, but a meta-system, or an attitude that treats all magical traditions as toolkits rather than sacred truths. 48. Its foundational tenets are no dogma and a relentless focus on practical, repeatable results. 46. Chaos magicians deconstruct traditional magic, asserting that the key operative mechanism is not the invocation of specific spirits or the use of ancient symbols, but the magician's own belief and their ability to enter a specific, altered state of consciousness. 48. This approach leads to a highly individualistic and eclectic practice where deities from ancient pantheons, characters from comic books, and corporate logos can all be used as magical tools, provided the practitioner can invest them with belief for the duration of the working. Techniques of chaos, gnosis, sigilization, and the primacy of belief. Within chaos magic, sex is one of several tools used to achieve its central technical requirement, the state of gnosis. Gnosis. In this context, gnosis does not refer to the Gnostic concept of divine knowledge, but to a specific altered state of consciousness where the mind is focused on a single point and all other thoughts are silenced. 13. This no mind state is considered essential to bypass the psychic censor or the filter of the conscious mind, allowing a magical intention to be implanted directly into the far more powerful subconscious. Chaos magicians identified that this state can be achieved through two primary pathways. Inhibitory gnosis, reached through quieting techniques like deep meditation, sensory deprivation, or fasting. Ecstatic gnosis, reached through intense arousal, such as frenzied dancing, emotional overload, pain, or, most conveniently and powerfully, sexual excitement and orgasm. Sigilization. The primary technique of chaos magic is the creation and charging of sigils. The process is a form of magical engineering. A statement of desire is written in a clear, positive, present tense format. The vowels and any repeating letters are removed. The remaining letters are graphically combined and stylized into an abstract, non-representational glyph, the sigil. 47. The purpose of this is to disguise the original desire from the conscious mind. The ritual. The chaos magician then enters a state of gnosis. In the context of sex magic, this involves masturbating or engaging in sexual activity while staring at the sigil. The focus is not on the desire itself, but purely on the abstract shape of the glyph and the building physical sensations. At the absolute peak of the experience, the moment of orgasm, the magician visualizes the sigil either glowing intensely and then shattering, or being fired like an arrow into the void. Immediately after, the practitioner must actively forget both the sigil and the original desire. This lust of result is believed to create conscious interference that prevents the subconscious from carrying out the magical operation. This methodology represents the ultimate instrumentalization of the sexual act within magic. It strips the orgasm of any inherent spiritual, sacramental, or theological significance. Randolph's Divine Gateway, Crowley's Holy Sacrament, and the New Age practitioner's high vibrational release are all discarded. In chaos magic, the orgasm is reduced to a purely functional, psychophysiological mechanism. A highly efficient and reliable method for inducing the ecstatic gnosis required for its magical technology to operate. It is placed in the same functional category as hyperventilation or flagellation. Its value is not in its meaning, but in its effectiveness at briefly shutting down the conscious mind. 13. This pragmatic, hacker's approach makes sex magic accessible to anyone, regardless of their spiritual beliefs. But in doing so, it completes the secularization of the practice, transforming a sacrament into a tool. Section 8. The dichotomy of practice. Modalities and philosophies. The practice of sex magic can be broadly categorized by the number of participants, solitary or partnered, and, more fundamentally, by its underlying philosophy regarding the nature and direction of sexual energy. These distinctions are not merely technical, but reflect deeply held views on the relationship between the self, the body, and the cosmos. The solitary path, autosexual magic and self-knowledge, solo sex magic, or autosexual practice, is frequently recommended as the ideal starting point for any aspiring practitioner. 52. It is often considered the most powerful and pure form of the art because it is entirely self-directed, eliminating the complexities and potential distractions of a partner's energy and intentions. The magician has complete control over the timing, focus, and intensity of the ritual, allowing for a more concentrated application of will. The techniques for solitary workings generally follow the modern manifestation model, setting a clear, present tense intention, creating a sacred and sensual space, raising sexual energy through self pleasure, often with the aid of sex toys to intensify the experience, maintaining focus on the intention or a corresponding sigil during arousal, and projecting that intention at the height of pleasure or orgasm. Beyond the goal of manifestation, the solitary path is a profound tool for self-exploration and empowerment. It provides a framework for individuals to connect deeply with their own bodies, to heal issues related to body image or past sexual trauma, and to reclaim full agency over their sexuality and pleasure. It is a path of self-knowledge where the practitioner becomes both the priest and the altar, the offerer and the offering. The dyadic current, partnered workings, and energetic exchange. Partnered sex magic introduces a layer of complexity and potential power by combining the energies of two or more individuals. The absolute prerequisites for any partnered working are explicit, enthusiastic consent, and a clear alignment on a shared magical goal. 3. Without this unified will, the energies are likely to be scattered and ineffective. Partnered techniques can be far more elaborate, often incorporating elements from Tantra to facilitate a deep energetic merging. Practices such as soul gazing, a form of the tantric practice of transfiguration, where partners maintain eye contact to connect on a soul-to-soul level, and synchronized circular breathing, where energy is consciously exchanged between the partners' bodies, are common. The underlying theory is that the ritual blends the masculine and feminine energies present in the participants, which all individuals are believed to possess, regardless of their physical gender or sexual orientation, to create a single, powerful, and unified magical current. The goals of partnered workings can be external, such as manifesting a shared desire like a new home, or internal and relational. Many couples use sex magic to consciously deepen their emotional and spiritual connection, improve their sexual intimacy, or achieve a shared state of ecstatic consciousness. The left hand versus right hand paths, orgasm as release versus energy as retention. The most profound philosophical division within the entire field of sex magic is the dichotomy between the left hand path, LHP, and the right hand path, RHP. This distinction hinges on the treatment of the orgasm and the direction of sexual energy, the right hand path, RHP. This approach is fundamentally a path of conservation and internal alchemy. Drawing on traditions like Taoist energy cultivation and codified in the West by figures like Samael Aun-Weor, the RHP views the physical ejaculation of sexual fluids as a catastrophic loss of vital life force, spiritual potential, and creative energy. 11. The goal of RHP sex magic is therefore sexual transmutation. Practitioners engage in sexual activity, often coitus reservatus, or intercourse without male orgasm, with the express purpose of building sexual energy to a high peak, and then, through willpower and breath control, consciously sublimating it. Instead of being released externally, the energy is drawn inward and upward through the spinal column and energy centers, where it is believed to nourish the brain, enhance spiritual consciousness, and fuel the development of higher energetic bodies. This is a path of discipline, control, and the mastery of the body's primal impulses. The left-hand path, LHP. This approach is a path of expenditure, release, and transgression. Exemplified by the systems of Randolph, Crowley, and chaos magic, the LHP sees the orgasm not as a loss of power, but as the absolute peak of power, the most potent moment for projecting the will and effecting magical change. 1. The entire ritual is designed to build toward this little death, this explosive release, using the overwhelming force of the climax to shatter the ego's defenses and cast a spell into the fabric of reality. 55. This path often embraces taboo and uses the breaking of societal and religious conventions as a means of generating power and achieving a state of self-deification. rather than seeking union with an external divine structure. 5. This fundamental divide can be understood as a conflict between the philosophies of control and surrender. The RHP practitioner seeks to gain power by mastering and controlling the sexual impulse, refusing to succumb to the biological imperative for release. Taunt 9. Their power is derived from their discipline. The LHP practitioner, in contrast, seeks to gain power by completely surrendering to the overwhelming force of the sexual impulse at its zenith. They use that moment of total ego dissolution and loss of control as the very vehicle for their magic. 56. The choice between these paths is therefore not merely technical but deeply philosophical, reflecting a practitioner's fundamental orientation toward their own primal nature. Is it a force to be conquered and refined, or a tidal wave to be embraced and ridden to magical effect? Section 9. The Inner Alchemy. Symbolism and Psychological Interpretations. Beyond its practical techniques, sex magic is rich with a deep symbolic language that can be interpreted through various psychological and esoteric lenses. The physical elements of the practice, the bodily fluids, the altered states, are imbued with profound metaphysical meaning, providing a bridge between the material body and the spiritual psyche. The elixirs of life, the symbolism of sexual fluids. In many sex magic traditions, particularly those of the left-hand path, bodily fluids are not viewed as mere biological byproducts, but as potent magical substances, the physical carriers of life force and spiritual essence. They are the elixirs of the alchemical work. Semen and vaginal fluids. These are considered the primary elixirs of life. They are seen as the physical condensation of an individual's creative energy, vitality, and will. In ritual, these fluids are used to anoint talismans, charge sigils with a personal magical link, or are consumed as a sacrament. 6. In Aleister Crowley's system, they are a key ingredient in the cake of light, a Eucharistic wafer that symbolizes the practitioner's ingestion of their own divinity. 33. Menstrual blood. This fluid holds a particularly powerful and ambivalent status. Because it is blood that was prepared to create and nourish life but was not used, it is seen as embodying the potent liminal space between life and death. In many folk magic and hoodoo traditions, menstrual blood is considered the most powerful agent for binding spells, particularly those related to love, loyalty, and sexual attraction. 59. Mixed fluids. The combination of male and female sexual fluids, semen and vaginal secretions, or menstrual blood, is considered an exceptionally powerful alchemical substance. It represents the perfect conjunctio in a single medium, the complete union of the solar and lunar, masculine and feminine principles, made manifest in a physical elixir. 60. A Jungian perspective. Alchemy, the conjunctio, and the integration of the psyche. The symbolism of sex magic finds a powerful interpretive framework in the analytical psychology of Carl Jung. Jung viewed the obscure allegories of medieval alchemy not as primitive chemistry, but as a projection of the processes of the unconscious mind. 19. The alchemical great work, the transformation of base lead into pure gold, was, for Jung, a metaphor for the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating the disparate parts of the psyche into a unified, whole self. 19. From this perspective, the central act of partnered sex magic can be seen as an external ritualization of the internal conjunctio. The union of the king and queen in the alchemical flask is a symbolic representation of the integration of the conscious ego with the unconscious, and specifically the reconciliation of the contrasexual archetypes within the psyche, the anima, the inner feminine in a man, and the animus, the inner masculine in a woman. 21. The magical child that is said to be born from the sex magic rite can be interpreted psychologically as the product of this integration, the birth of the individuated self, a new, more complete, and transcendent state of being. 20. Jung himself used the explicit sexual imagery from the 16th century alchemical text Rosarium Philosophorum to illustrate the psychological dynamics of transference and the transformative potential of relationships. 19. The psychology of ritual, altered states, suggestion, and the power of the unconscious. While practitioners may attribute the results of sex magic to supernatural forces, the practice can also be analyzed through a secular psychological lens, providing a plausible model for its perceived efficacy without either validating or debunking its metaphysical claims. This analysis deconstructs the practice into a highly effective technology of autohypnosis, leveraging a peak psychophysiological experience to program the subconscious mind. Induction of altered states of consciousness, ASC. The sexual act, and orgasm in particular, is a natural and powerful method for inducing an ASC 63. This state is characterized by a temporary suspension of the critical, rational faculty, the psychic sensor, reduced awareness of external stimuli, emotional euphoria, and heightened suggestibility. Plot 13. Research into shamanic rituals demonstrates that an individual's pre-existing beliefs and expectations play a crucial role in shaping the content and intensity of their experience within an ASC. 63. A sex magic practitioner enters the ritual with a strong belief in its power and a clearly defined intention, predisposing them to a meaningful experience. Focused intention and suggestion. All the preparatory elements of a sex magic ritual, creating a sacred space, setting a clear intention, performing invocations, and visualizing the desired outcome, serve to focus the mind and create a state of intense concentration and heightened suggestibility, similar to the induction phase of hypnosis. Implanting the suggestion. The core of the operation can be understood as a method for implanting a powerful post-hypnotic suggestion, the magical intention or sigil, directly into the subconscious mind. The moment of orgasm is the ideal point for this implantation. At this peak, conscious resistance is at its lowest, and emotional and physiological intensity is at its highest. The subconscious mind, which is highly receptive in this state and tends to operate on vivid imagery and emotional charges rather than logic, accepts the visualized goal as a directive. 68. The intense pleasure and powerful neurochemical cascade of the orgasm serve to anchor this suggestion with profound emotional weight, making it significantly more potent than a simple waking affirmation. The subconscious then works to align the individual's perceptions, choices, and actions with this deeply embedded directive, thereby bringing about the manifested result in the external world. This provides a non-supernatural model that reframes sex magic as a powerful and embodied form of psychological programming. Using the practitioner's own nervous system as the ultimate ritual apparatus. Section text. Conclusion. The enduring power of a transgressive sacrament. The trajectory of sex magic through Western esotericism reveals a fascinating evolution from veiled symbolism in ancient texts to a codified, multifaceted modern practice. It began as a symbolic language in the allegories of alchemy and the heretical whispers of Gnosticism, where the union of opposites was a metaphor for spiritual perfection. It was first forged into a practical, albeit morally constrained, system by the 19th century visionary Paschal Beverly Randolph, who dared to identify the orgasm as a gateway to the divine. This foundational work was then seized upon by Aleister Crowley, who, through the philosophical lens of Thelema, shattered its moralistic confines and transformed sex magic into a revolutionary sacrament. He institutionalized it within the initiatory structure of the Ordo Templi Orientis, establishing a formal curriculum that presented sexuality as the ultimate key to unlocking all esoteric wisdom. In the contemporary era, this potent practice has bifurcated. On one hand, it has been popularized and secularized, absorbed into New Age spirituality as a simplified technique for manifestation, repackaged for a mass audience as a tool for personal empowerment and achieving high vibrational states. On the other hand, it has been deconstructed to its absolute functional core by chaos magic, which strips the act of all inherent meaning and reduces it to a purely pragmatic, psychophysiological tool for inducing the Gnostic state necessary for its magical technology. Despite these divergent paths, the enduring power of sex magic lies in its role as a quintessential expression of modern Western esotericism's central preoccupations: liberation, transgression, and the apotheosis of the individual will. For Randolph, it was a liberation of sexuality into a sacred space, albeit one still fenced in by the anxieties of his time. For Crowley, it was a tool of radical transgression, a weapon to demolish the repressive religious and social dogmas of the old aeon, by sacralizing the very acts they condemned. For the modern practitioner, it is a path to personal liberation from psychological blockages and a means of asserting creative control over one's own reality. Ultimately, whether viewed as a spiritual sacrament, a psychological technology, or a tool for material gain, sex magic consistently places the individual's will, body, and creative power at the absolute center of the magical universe. It is a declaration that the most profound spiritual force is not to be found in a distant heaven or an ancient text, but within the depths of one's own embodied, erotic nature. It remains, in all its forms, a potent and transgressive sacrament of the self.